Cast Phantasmal Image as a copy of Dockside. Activate Kenrith. Good game. This might be what you hear when the game ends, but what's actually going on behind the scenes? Welcome back to Better Know a Combo, brought to you by the Spike Feeders and GAMEGENIC. If you've been watching our CEDH recap series, you might have seen this combo end a game just last week. It involves Dockside Extortionist, and to execute the loop, the Dockside count needs to be 8 or higher. We'll also be using Phantasmal Image, which is going to repeatedly enter as a copy of Dockside Extortionist. Finally, we'll use Kenrith Returned King. He's got a lot of abilities, but the ones we'll be using are the green one that adds counters and the black one that reanimates creatures. With Kenrith and Dockside Extortionist in play, I'll cast Phantasmal Image. When it resolves, I'll have it enter as a copy of Dockside Extortionist. When it enters, it'll trigger its own ability, making me 8 treasures. I'll then pay 1 and a green to activate Kenrith's green ability, targeting the Phantasmal Image copy of Dockside. This triggers Phantasmal Image's ability, causing me to sacrifice it before the Kenrith ability resolves. It'll go to the graveyard, and the Kenrith ability doesn't resolve because its target isn't valid on resolution. From there, I can pay 4 and a black to activate Kenrith's black ability, targeting Phantasmal Image in my graveyard. When that resolves, it'll enter the battlefield as Dockside and trigger its own ability, creating 8 more treasures. At this point, I've demonstrated a loop that nets 1 treasure per iteration, and I can continue executing it until I've got as many treasures as my heart desires. Once I've got enough mana, I can activate Kenrith's blue ability, targeting all of my opponents, causing them to draw 1 more card than their library will allow. This causes them to lose the game, of course. This sounds awesome, but how can people interact? Let's take a look at the combo and talk about the ways you can interact at the times you receive priority. With Kenrith and Dockside Extortionist in play, cast Phantasmal Image. At this point, you've got an opportunity to remove either of the pieces in play. If your removal exiles, I'd recommend popping the Dockside Extortionist here. Getting rid of it permanently is going to stop the combo in its tracks. You can also counter the Phantasmal Image or flash in a Hushwing Gryph. The Hushwing Gryph prevents the Dockside ability from triggering, so I'll just have a sad combo that never really got off the ground. You could also remove the Kenrith, but if it's their commander, you're really just kicking the can down the road a bit. When the Phantasmal Image resolves, it'll enter as a copy of Dockside Extortionist and trigger its own ability. One thing you can do here is modify the number of artifacts in play that Dockside will see when it enters, because the number of treasures isn't decided until the ability resolves. If you've got a Force of Vigor or a Braid, consider using it here to bring the count down to 7 or less. At 7, this combo won't net mana, and at 6 or less, it can't be executed much past the first iteration. You can also just stifle the Dockside trigger. Once the Dockside trigger resolves, I'll make my treasures and use 2 of them to activate Kenrith's ability, targeting the Phantasmal Image copy of Dockside. This will immediately trigger Phantasmal Image's ability, which will go on the stack on top of Kenrith's ability. This is your last opportunity to point your spot removal at Dockside or Kenrith, because any targeted removal pointed at Phantasmal Image will just trigger it again, causing it to hit the graveyard before your spot removal even starts resolving. Once the Phantasmal Image trigger resolves, it'll be in my graveyard, and the Kenrith ability fails to resolve due to a lack of a valid target. The last step in this combo is to activate Kenrith's black ability, targeting Phantasmal Image in my graveyard, and you'll have one last opportunity to respond here. Now's a good opportunity to exile the Phantasmal Image from my graveyard using something like Unlicensed Hearse or Relic of Progenitus. Keep an eye on floating mana though, because if I have enough, I can just activate Kenrith again in response to whatever you're doing to interact. But what if you're not playing reactive spells like that? How can we shut them down? This combo requires me to repeatedly reanimate Phantasmal Image from my graveyard. You can put a stop to this using Graveyard Hate All-Stars like Leyline of the Void or Rest in Peace. Baldur's Gate newcomer Ravenloft Adventurer can also send the Phantasmal Image back to exile, and gain a little advantage on the way. You can also prevent me from activating Kenrith using Curse Totem or Linvala Keeper of Silence. Keep these in mind whenever you think about going up against a creature-based combo. We also talked about using Hushwing Gryph as a gotcha earlier, but Tocatli Honor Guard and Hushbringer are also great onboard ways to shut down Dockside's ETB ability. Finally, if you can prevent me from activating abilities of artifacts using something like Null Rod or Collector Oof, I won't be able to use my treasures to pay for Kenrith's costs. You could also use something like Blind Obedience or Kismet to cause my treasures to enter tapped, putting a cap on the number of times I can execute the loop per turn. That just about does it for this episode of Better Know a Combo. If you've got a combo you want to see explained, make sure you let me know in the comments below, and we'll catch you next time.